Water is one of the most basic of human needs. The body uses it for a multitude of essential functions, like producing sweat and blood. Human bodies even consist of between 45 to 75% of water, and if you go more than 3 days without it, you'll just fall dead. For most people watching this video, it's pretty easy to stay hydrated. We have ready access to clean freshwater sources. This too was the case for most people living in the 18th century. Living in the countryside, you'd have a deep well or a brook to collect your drinks from. As for the cities, you may have heard that famous anecdote about the contaminated drinking water of London, and that people were forced to drink alcohol to quench their thirst. However, some period sources claim that the water in London was fine, and that the alcohol was purely a preference. Indeed, there seems to be a low-intensity debate amongst history buffs in regards to historical drinking water, with one side saying that all water was undrinkable, and another the opposite. The truth seems more so to be that it varied from place to place, and person to person. The same goes when we discuss drinking water aboard a ship. Aboard a ship, drinking water was kept in large, wooden barrels. For one, water needs to be kept moving, lest it grows stale. Over a long time, bacteria will infest it. Storing the water in a container of living, organic material, wood, does not help the process. The drinking water on a ship would quickly grow discolored and sludgy with algae, and infested with insects and fly eggs. Some drank it anyway, having to pinch their noses beforehand. Others used a cloth to strain out all the creepy stuff before drinking. The amount of water determined the length of the expedition, since, if it ran out, the crew would perish. Many expeditions had to be cut short or return home due to water shortage. You could also stop and resupply in a friendly beach or sufficient coast. Water was, of course, used for a variety of other purposes than drinking. Cooking, cleaning dishes, washing clothes, putting out fires, shaving. If you had animals like cows, pigs or goats aboard, they needed a lot to drink. Tubs of water were often put below decks so that smokers had somewhere to clean their pipes, without having to risk potential embers setting the ship on fire. But if you ran out of water, why not fetch it from the sea? The ship is surrounded by loads of it. Salt water could be used for some purposes. It's great for putting out fires and pipes, gives some flavor to boiled food, but washing your shirt in the sea will make it stiffer than a morning stiffy. As for drinking, salt water contains too much salt, hence the name. The amount of salt basically outweighs the water you consume, and you just end up thirstier or dead. This didn't stop some pirates from trying. Henry Pitman, a doctor both rescued and captured by pirates, wrote how, "With drinking salt water, our mouths are almost grown together and hardly able to speak." The same goes for urine. Unlike feces, piss is entirely safe to drink, but it only makes you thirstier. Again, this did not stop some genial pirates from trying. In the desperate 1681 Battle of Arica, the assailing Buccaneers were so choked with the dust from the battlefield that they resorted to drinking the water of their own. And don't even think about drinking bilge water. The bilge is the lowest compartment of the ship and full of water. Though this water was vital for maintaining the ship's balance, it was absolutely contaminated by all the shit, sometimes literal, seeping through the planks of the ship. One sailor wrote that, "This night, 2 of our carpenter's crew, being sent on to search the well, were struck dead with a damp, as they call it, but being hoisted up again speedily, they recovered with much difficulty. The occasion of these damps is the tightness of a ship, and lying still a long time, the bilge water corrupts and stinks, so that it is enough to poison the devil, and all the little plate and silver I have been turned black with the vapors of our bilge water in a night's time." For longer voyages, the solution was often to supplement water with alcohol. But not the strong stuff. Small beer could slake your thirst and had enough alcohol to kill bacteria, but not enough to intoxicate. Beer was even drunk by shipboard abstainers, such as Bartholomew Roberts. Beer was especially common in European waters, but also in the northern colonies. But in the tropics, it preserved poorly. Neither did pirates particularly seem to like small beer. Charles Johnson wrote a memorable anecdote of how a group of pirates hosted a theatrical trial. In this trial, the pirate playing the prisoner was condemned for allegedly drinking small beer. The pirate playing the judge claimed that there never was a sober fellow but what was a rogue, and that lawful men only drank proper rum. Of course, like most anecdotes in a general history, This story might have been entirely made up. That doesn't mean that general history doesn't hint at a contemporary cultural trend. Indeed, there is little evidence to pirates having beer or small beer as a common substitute for water. The only times I've encountered beer in a pirate or sailor's journal was when it was brought with them from Europe. Most evidence points to them just drinking, well, water. As I've repeated many times in this series on pirate food, pirates primarily operated around uninhabited coasts and islands, where it was easy to make a quick landing and refill your water supply. Again, Dr. Henry Pitman wrote how his crew sailed up a creek, where they went ashore and dug a well, 4 or 6 foot deep. It took them the whole night, but in the end they collected 40 gallons from the well. In other cases, pirates used already existing wells, and might force locals to reveal them. Fresh streams could likewise be used. Filling all the casks and bringing them back aboard could take a week or more, depending on the size of the ship and crew. Water was kept in large wooden casks, usually leaguers, that contained 150 gallons. This picture depicts one such cask. Having been filled, it had to be rolled back to the shore, where it took up the entirety of a boat. Ships sometimes had a special carpenter aboard, called a cooper. His expertise was in maintaining and constructing buckets, barrels, and casks for all things liquid. Since barrels were quite easy to move around, you just rolled them. They were used for storing dry stuff too, like sugar, salt meat, and gunpowder. Barrels had other creative uses. Alexandre Selkirk, the real-life inspiration behind Robinson Crusoe, made knife blades from the iron hoops of barrels washed ashore. The cooper could sometimes get creative. Dampier wrote how one canoe was sawn asunder and made into bumpkins. The bumpkins were then taken apart and the canoe reassembled. Bumpkin, or bombkin, is a rather funny Buccaneers word for water barrels. They appear to have stolen the word from the Dutch. I'm not sure how much water a bombkin carried. The Spanish used large clay jars for storing all their provisions, gunpowder, alcohol, and you guessed it, fresh water. Since clay is an inorganic material, this storage form would have been superior, as it would have kept the water fresher for a longer period, slightly at least. Pirates did sometimes use these jars when looted from the Spanish, but it did not seem as if they favored it any more than barrels. Pirates also kept water on their own person. This was kept in flasks made from wood or leather. Gourds were likewise used, as were calabashes made from leather. Barrels of water were kept on the main deck for drinking. The cooper broached them open with an adze, but if the barrel contained brandy, he had to be very careful, lest he'd spark a fire. The crewmen either drank from wooden bowls, cups, and if lacking these, one captain mentioned that our water we obtained from sucking it from the cask through a gun barrel, used promiscuously by everyone. If there was no land in sight, water could be collected from rainfall. Again, Pitman writes, God Almighty was pleased to send us a very great shower of rain, which lasted so long that by means of a sheet held out by 4 corners, with a weight in it, we caught about 2 gallons of water. George Shelwack wrote how his crew used sheets, blankets, and sails to catch all the rainwater they could. In larger oceans, finding fresh water was harder. In the Indian Ocean, sailors and pirates often fetched water on the islands of Anjouan, historically called Johanna. Some relied entirely on the waters here, which was said to be the best in the world. But after the water was put in a barrel, a weird sort of oily scum gathered on top, allegedly flammable. After 24 hours, the water was recovered and fit to drink. The Red Sea Men, also called the Roundsmen, were a group of pirates that hunted pilgrim ships in the Red Sea and Indian Ocean. Their common tactic was to park their ships at Bab el-Mandeb, the passage where the Red Sea flows into the Gulf of Aden, and there prey on passing Muslims. The weather there was hot and dry. Finding water in such a place was nigh impossible. On one of the islands they tried digging a well, pounding 15 fathoms through hard rock, never finding a drop to drink. Water could be hard to find and easy to lose. If kept in an open boat or unsafely aboard a ship, a sudden salt spray from the sea might utterly ruin it, as could carelessness. Ned Lowe is often remembered for being one of the cruelest pirates, having roasted people alive for the fun of it, but he was often far from competent. When careening his ship, that is, tipping it to the side so that the barnacles could be scraped off the bottom, he forgot to unload the cargo and close the gun ports. The ship was flooded and sank. depriving the crew of much of the necessary provisions, and enforcing a strict rationing. The average human needs 2 liters of water a day. That's about half a gallon. But because a seaman in the Edge of Sail worked harder and longer and ate much saltier food, he could expect a gallon to drink a day. That's about 4.5 liters. Provided there was enough beer or water to go around. If there wasn't, rations had to be cut. Aboard the company ship the Scepter, Edward Barlow wrote how the crew were reduced to a quart of water a day, which was but a small quantity to poor men that eat dry biscuit and salt beef boiled in salt water, and in a hot climate. On navy and merchant ships, the captain and officers were given larger rations. On pirates and privateers, this seems to have varied, but in most cases, the captain would have endured their hardships and shared the rations. This video has gone on long enough, so I don't want to cover alcohol more than necessary. If you wish to learn more, I have an entire video on that topic, though I might want to remake it in the future. Most important is that pirates never drank grog. That drink did not appear until well after the golden age of piracy, and was invented by the Navy to prevent their sailors from getting drunk. And, as you might know, getting drunk was a huge part of pirate culture, so they most likely would not have accepted it. As for alcoholic drinks, wine, brandy and rum, of course, were the most popular. They called it Christmas when they could mix rum, sugar and lime juice into their favorite drink, rum punch. Again, if you wish to learn more, please see my video on pirate alcohols. Huge thanks to my generous supporters over on Patreon. Cole Freer, Max Twick, Mikael Jans, 1660, Red Hate, Buccaneer, Dreadbeard, Gus Rowe, Rachel Lockar, Dyer, Ted Levin, Flintlock, George Skull, and Part of Jesus. Don't forget to give the video a like and a comment, and share it with a friend. Cheers.